Welcome to the Jungle, Bengals fans. I'm Kyle Phelps, and the Bengals got crazy in this year's draft. They went with a very uncharacteristically aggressive approach with their targets and took some massive swings on some guys who would be absolute home runs if they work out, I think that was the theme of the draft this year. I'd say most of them have pretty mid-range floors if they don't work out, but the Bengals were clearly targeting upside in this draft as they enter a whole new era where guys like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are going to eat up more and more and more of that salary cap every year. Actually, in between writing this script and recording this video, Jamar Chase's fifth-year option was picked up, so we know that next contract is coming. They're going to have to hit big on some draft prospects over the next few years, and it seems like they're trying to do that, which I love. Man, oh man, though, did the Bengals take some big swings this year. Round 1, the hopeful right tackle of the future is who they took in Amarius Mims, whichever, out of Georgia. It's unfortunate that their first round pick is probably a guy who's not going to contribute a whole lot right away because we've got Trent Brown there in year 1, and tackles tend not to be like right where they're always going to be right away, so there's a little bit of a development period with them anyway. And then Amarius Mims obviously doesn't have all the starting experience as is. But imagine all the 6 lineman formations that they could potentially run. This guy's 6'8" and 340. I mean, he's going to be able to do a lot. Plus, he's got a ton of upside. The only reason he even fell to the Bengals at 18 is because, like I said, there's just not a huge amount of tape on him. He only started 8 games in college, and that's 116 snaps in 3 years at Georgia. And they were mostly awesome, don't get me wrong. If that's who he is in the NFL, then the Bengals are getting a future Pro Bowler. So for as much as we know right now, and considering who else was on the board when the Bengals picked, I think that this pick is an A. So they got Chris Jenkins in the second round, and that was my favorite pick of the draft, personally. I like Mims. I really like Mims. But I was also a little disappointed that we didn't get Brock Bowers in the first round. I know he wasn't available, but I thought maybe we could have traded up for him. But Jenkins, I actively wanted Jenkins. I've been in Jenkins' corner for a while. If he can bulk up, he can be a perfect DJ Reader replacement at a way lower price tag. I don't see a downside at all with this pick. Yeah, he could stand to get better as a pass rusher, but we literally have Sheldon Rankins and BJ Hill on the team, so, I mean, he's really just going to be part of a rotation, and I think that's a hell of a pickup for the Bengals in the second round, so this one's an A+ for me. Now, another pick that's really hard to criticize, at least purely from a football standpoint, is Jermaine Burton in the third round with pick 80. If they're moving on from Tyler Boyd, which seems like that's the case now, then they absolutely had to go get a high-quality slot receiver at some point in this draft. No offense to Charlie Jones, but he's no Tyler Boyd. Burton easily could have that kind of impact, though. Now, we can't talk about him without mentioning the elephant in the room. He's got temper issues, and there was that time when Alabama lost to Tennessee. He was all pissed off, and the Tennessee fans started storming the field, and he ended up smacking a girl. And you can't do that. You just cannot do that. But I've heard him talk about it. He seems like he's got genuine remorse, and he understands that he needs to control himself more going forward. Plus, it's not like he's a serial girlfriend beater or anything like that, so, I'm okay with taking a massive swing here. He's got to improve, but, it worked out with Joe Mixon. So, I'll give this pick an A-. Now, I will say, the other third-round pick I don't really understand. At all. Like, at all. Not that he's a bad player or anything, but personally, I thought that getting McKinley Jackson here was weird. I didn't think he'd get drafted at all. I thought he'd be a guy you could pick up as a UDFA or something like that. So taking him in the third round is like, what are we doing? He's got a ton of potential, don't get me wrong. He needs to pull it all together more consistently, though, which he's just never really done. So for me, this is a D+. If he's your guy, and I'll give the Bengals a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, if he's your guy, and you feel like the rest of the NFL is higher on him than most other people, then go get him. Go get him. You're gonna have to prove me wrong on this one. I would have gone, especially if you're definitely going with doubling up on defensive tackle. I mean, like Brandon Dorlus, Jordan Jefferson, Those are guys who I think would have made more sense at 97. In the 4th round, I was absolutely thrilled, though, to go see Fairfield High School alumni Arae get picked up. Now, I didn't go to school at Fairfield in high school, but I live there now, and both of my kids will. One of them already has, and the other one is 9 years old, and he will end up going to Fairfield High School. The question, though, is, can Arae stay healthy? Because, that's why you take him in the 4th round, first of all. But if he hits, he could be the next great Iowa tight end in the NFL, and Iowa puts out a lot of great tight ends in the NFL. If not, though, it's a 4th round pick, and, they ended up taking another guy as insurance later on, and I really liked that pick, so I'll give this one an A-. In the 5th round, the Bengals went with TCU cornerback Josh Newton. From a player value perspective, this was an incredible pickup by the Bengals. He was actually considered a potential 1st-round prospect, looking at like the way too early draft boards that we were looking at before the 23 college season, and he did not live up to expectations, which is why the Bengals are getting him in the 5th round. He could potentially solve that nickel corner role that the Bengals have been trying to find since they lost Trey Flowers. Of course, that could also be solved by Dax Hill's position change, but I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next video that I'm going to put out here in, about a week or so. Either way, there was a small need for the Bengals to take some kind of swing at corner, and Newton, I think, definitely fits that bill. As long as you've got him playing on the inside, don't ask him to cover like Tyreek Hill or nothing like that, then I think there's a lot of potential here. So I'll give this one a B+. Now, I really love, theoretically, what the Bengals did with the first of their 2 6th-round picks. Now, it's quite possible that Arizona tight end Tanner McLachlan doesn't even make the roster. At this point, I think the Bengals are a lot more comfortable with Drew Sample than a lot of people are. And Tanner Hudson, I think, has shown enough that he deserves a chance to get a spot on the roster. Now, the only thing, though, is the projected starter, Mike Gesicki, is really more of a big slot receiver than he is a true tight end. So and maybe the Bengals are comfortable with keeping 4 tight ends on the roster because of that. As long as, the last guy on the roster is contributing in special teams and can play like a fullback type role, which, by the way, Tanner McLachlan can do. The one thing is, with Tanner McLachlan, and the reason he fell so far in the draft, is, according to his measurables, he shouldn't be as good as he is. He's got all the technique, he just doesn't quite have the size. He's not really quite what you look for when you think of, a great tight end prospect in the NFL. Getting him in the 6th round, I think, is a great type of thing to do. You don't know if he's going to work out. If he doesn't make the roster, he's a 6th-round pick. But you could end up really hitting big in the 6th round with a guy like this. Plus it gives you some insurance for Arae if he doesn't work out, so I'll give this pick an A. Now, their other 6th-round pick, I don't quite get this one. Cedric Johnson out of Ole Miss. The issue is I don't see a path to the roster for him. Maybe next year if he sticks around on the practice squad and develops a little bit, then maybe. But he's got the size. It's just a very crowded room, he's not beating out Joseph Osai or Miles Murphy. I don't think he's beating out Cam Sample. I guess if they keep 6 defensive ends, maybe he could be that 6th guy, but I just don't know if they will, considering all of the other talent they're trying to pack on this roster at other positions. Then again, maybe he could be, like I said, a guy they sneak on the practice squad. And then maybe he can be a guy who takes over for Osai or Sample next year when both of their contracts are up and maybe one of them doesn't come back. I also get that people thought Cedric Johnson might have gone a little bit earlier than he went, but we're talking about maybe the 4th round. We're not talking about this guy could have been a 1st-round prospect or anything like that. So I'll give this one a C because maybe I don't. It's a 6th-round pick, so it's not like McKinley Jackson in the end of the 3rd. It's what the hell are you doing? But, Cedric Johnson, I'm not really sure what the plan is here, but, whatever, and maybe it's a pick for 2025 instead of 2024, so I'll give it a C. Speaking of struggling to make the roster, the Bengals took Dejon Anthony with their first 7th-round pick. And that's definitely a guy who I think a lot of people thought would go a lot earlier, which, I think that's great. Even if you don't see a path to the roster for this guy, he was a 7th-round pick. You've got 10 picks in the draft this year, so, why not throw one at that? The possibility's there. He could contribute on special teams, and he might end up doing that better than Tyson Anderson. But then again, I don't really. Tyson Anderson's a pretty good special teams player, so probably not. Plus, he's a pretty solid backup safety. But you never know. You really never know. Again, maybe this is a guy that you stash on the practice squad, and he provides like a natural succession plan, at least for the backup spot, for the future. And then, you know, all you have to do is kind of shuffle the safety room around a little bit. It's not happening this year. It's a really crowded room this year, but yeah, maybe in the future, you know, and you get that guy in, and he can kind of learn your system, and then maybe in the future he's a guy who you can kind of rely on at the back end of the roster. So for me, I'll give it a B-, just because we're late in the draft here, and, you know, the upside is there. I don't really think he makes the roster, so I can't go any higher than a B-, but, you know, we'll see. And then with the Bengals' final pick of the NFL draft, they may have knocked it out of the park with this one. I really, really like this pick. You know, not quite as much as I love the Chris Jenkins pick, but for being the pick 237, which is 20 spots before Mr. Irrelevant, Matt Lee, the center from Miami, I think was a good one. Depending on which outlet you ask, the Bengals picked him right about where he was expected to be picked. But depending on who else you ask, he's a guy who could be a future starter and therefore would have been worth a top 100 pick. So, I mean, theoretically, you could have possibly made the argument of picking Matt Lee at 97 and McKinley Jackson at this spot. That would have made everything a whole lot more justifiable, which in a way kind of does. But, I mean, here's the thing. Part of why he was lower on a lot of boards is that he's a project. He's undersized. He's a center-only prospect. You know, you're not moving him around to, like, guard and stuff like that like you can do with Trey Hill. That said, if he ends up being a pretty solid player, then I could see him beating out Trey Hill for that backup center spot. And then Trey Hill you can push out to guard, which I actually think that he performed a little bit better at guard when the Bengals played him there anyway. So, you know, you're helping out with that depth at the interior offensive line spot, and you didn't have to really spend like a huge pick to go do it anyway, as long as, you know, Matt Lee works out, obviously. But, you know, keep Trey Hill as a guard on the roster, and I think that's a good spot for him. And now suddenly your backup offensive line, if it works out like that, is either Deontay Smith or Jackson Carman, whoever they keep around at the backup left tackle spot, Cody Ford, Matt Lee, Trey Hill, and Amarius Mims. As depth pieces, I love that lineup, by the way. I mean, honestly, this backup lineup might actually be better than the starting lineup that the Bengals had when they went to the Super Bowl a few years ago. So, you know, again, 20 picks away from Mr. Irrelevant, and you get a guy who, if he hits, could have been a top 100 draft pick. So, I'll give it an A. So there you go. Here are my recap of all the grades that I gave. Overall, if you average all of these grades out, it ends up being about a B overall. Now, obviously, that could improve to an A if some of these guys that I'm skeptical on actually hit, particularly McKinley Jackson. I mean, if that pick actually works out, then, you know, bully. If they had gotten somebody that I liked better with this pick, then automatically that's more like a B+, right? They're right on the edge of it being a B+. It's just I really didn't like the McKinley Jackson pick. And then if you find a little bit more value in some of those later picks, plus, you know, somebody I value a little bit more than McKinley Jackson, then this could have been an A-, like, of a draft, honestly. I just don't love every single pick in this draft the way that some seem to, so I'm going to stick with a B on this one. I know Trevor Sikkema, for example, really loves the Bengals draft class. I think it's solid. You know, I could see the path. It's just not. I don't think that this was an absolute home run of a draft for the Bengals. I do feel that they knocked it out of the park with the first 3 picks. I mean, they were on a great trajectory, and then McKinley Jackson, which, again, McKinley Jackson, if for whatever reason you're watching this, I hope you make it. I just, you know, I felt like the Bengals could have gotten him way later in the draft. Like, I mean, if you swap McKinley Jackson and Matt Lee, then I'm probably calling Matt Lee a reach, but I'm probably grading it better than the McKinley Jackson pick. And then, you know, McKinley Jackson would have been a great pick late in the draft, but that's just the way that I see it. But anyway, that's all I got. I'm producing another video to pair with this one that I've got scheduled to come out at some point while I'm in England. So hopefully that'll keep the content moving so that, you know, I actually have some time to put it out. Till then, y'all can always catch more of what I do at Kyle Phelps92 on X, Facebook.com/The Phelps, the Battle of Ohio podcast, and right here if you subscribe. Once again, draft grades are kind of useless until the class has a few years under its belt. But I still think it's a fun way to kind of recap things and gauge how we're feeling about it right now. So you're getting them whether you like it or not. I'll leave y'all, as always, with a hoo-day!